I am Morgan Wellington, 30 years old and the owner of a luxury hotel chain that most people spend their entire lives saving up to experience for just one night. I began as a hospitality student with big dreams, and now I manage 15 properties across 3 continents. Yet, I still found myself seeking approval from parents who never supported my choices. When my phone buzzed with that text from my dad, I stared at it in disbelief. "You're not welcome in our 5-star hotel." The irony was almost laughable. Their 5-star hotel. I smiled and picked up my phone. "Security, please revoke the Wellington family's VIP access. If you're watching this right now, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to join me as this family drama unfolds in the most luxurious setting possible." Growing up in Wellesley, an affluent suburb of Boston, my childhood seemed perfect from the outside. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn, and my parents, Harold and Diana Wellington, were the epitome of upper-middle-class success. Dad built his reputation as one of Boston's most sought-after corporate attorneys, while Mom maintained our family's social standing by hosting charity galas and sitting on the boards of various cultural institutions. From an early age, I understood that in the Wellington household, status and reputation were everything. Law, medicine, and finance, these were the only careers worthy of consideration. Hospitality? That was, as my father often dismissively put it, a servant's profession. My fascination with hotels began during our family vacations. While my parents worked with other successful couples by the pool, I would wander through grand lobbies, mesmerized by the orchestrated chaos that somehow resulted in perfect service. "Morgan, stop bothering the concierge with your questions," my mom would scold, pulling me away. "They're busy working." But I couldn't help myself. I collected hotel brochures, studied room layouts, and took notes about amenities. By the age of 12, I could tell you the difference between a standard turn-down service and the elaborate rituals at 5-star properties. My room at home became an archive of hotel ephemera, key cards, branded pens, even those little shampoo bottles housekeeping would give me when I asked politely. "This is just a phase," Dad would tell Mom when they thought I couldn't hear. "She'll grow out of this nonsense and focus on something substantial." High school brought academic success, straight A's, debate team captain, and editor of the school newspaper. But none of it seemed to matter unless it aligned with my parents' vision. When I won a regional essay contest about innovation in the service industry, Dad barely looked up from his legal briefs. "That's nice, honey," he said. "But make sure you're focusing on your political science coursework. That will actually help you in law school." The real battle began during college application season. While my parents dropped not-so-subtle hints about Harvard, Yale, and Columbia law programs, I secretly applied to the top hospitality management schools in the country. The acceptance letter from Cornell's hotel administration program arrived first. I still remember the weight of that envelope in my hands, how my fingers trembled as I opened it. This was my ticket to the future I actually wanted. When I showed my parents, the temperature in our living room dropped by 20 degrees. "This is not what we discussed," Dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. "This is not the path for a Wellington." "It's the path for this Wellington," I replied, surprising even myself with my determination. The ultimatum came swiftly: study their choice or pay my own way. I chose independence. Through student loans and working 3 part-time jobs, simultaneously as a front desk associate at a local hotel, waitressing on weekends, and tutoring wealthy kids in French, I put myself through one of the most prestigious hospitality programs in the world. Contact with my parents dwindled over those 4 years. Birthday calls lasted 5 minutes. Holiday visits became increasingly strained. When I graduated with honors, my parents were noticeably absent. They had chosen to attend my brother Thomas's law school graduation ceremony, which happened to fall on the same weekend. "We are sure you understand," Mom said over the phone. "This is such an important milestone for him." The message was clear: his accomplishment mattered more. That day, something shifted inside me. As I sat alone after the ceremony, watching other graduates celebrate with their families, I made a silent promise to myself that one day they would regret underestimating me. Little did I know how prophetic that thought would become, or how much emotional distance would grow between us over the years to come. Armed with my Cornell degree and a determination fueled partly by parental dismissal, I moved to Manhattan and landed my first job as a front desk associate at the Archer, a boutique hotel in Midtown. The starting salary was barely enough to afford a tiny studio apartment in Queens that I shared with 2 other hospitality graduates. But I was finally in the industry I loved. I worked ridiculous hours, volunteering for overnight shifts, covering for sick colleagues, and studying every aspect of the operation. Sleep became a luxury I rarely afforded myself. When other associates complained about demanding guests, I saw each difficult interaction as an opportunity to prove my problem-solving abilities. 6 months in, a guest had a complete meltdown over a room assignment. As he berated my colleague, I stepped in with a solution that not only calmed him down but turned him into a loyal patron. What I didn't realize was that Catherine Reynolds, the regional director for Pinnacle Hotels, who happened to be in the lobby, witnessed the entire exchange. "You handled that with exceptional grace," she said, approaching the desk after the guest departed. "What is your name?" That chance encounter changed everything. Catherine became my mentor, recognizing something in me that I had not fully understood yet. She began inviting me to observe management meetings and soliciting my input on guest experience improvements, when a massive booking system failure left the hotel overbooked by 30 rooms during Fashion Week. I stayed up all night calling partner properties and arranging transportation for displaced guests. The next morning, Catherine promoted me to assistant manager. I called my parents, hoping that this first significant promotion might finally earn some recognition. "Assistant manager." Dad chuckled. "So, you're still playing hotelier. When are you going to get serious about your future, Morgan?" I hung up and cried in the supply closet for 10 minutes. Then, I washed my face, reapplied my makeup, and returned to the floor with a smile. Their approval no longer mattered. I told myself it was a lie, but a necessary one. Catherine continued giving me special projects, challenging me beyond my job description. When Pinnacle's Chicago property began struggling with occupancy rates, she suggested I temporarily relocate to help turn it around. "This could make or break your career trajectory," she warned. "The team there is resistant to change, and the market is highly competitive. When do I start?" I asked without hesitation. My parents predictably thought I was making another mistake. "Jumping from job to job shows instability," Mom lectured during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. "No one wants to hire someone who cannot commit." In Chicago, I developed an innovative marketing campaign targeting young professionals and tech companies. I redesigned the food and beverage program and implemented new training protocols for staff. Within 9 months, our occupancy increased by 40%, and revenue per available room shot up, leading the market. The property went from Pinnacle's problem child to its most improved location nationally. This success caught the attention of James Hartford, Pinnacle's CEO, who invited me to participate in the company's fast-track executive program. At 25, I became the youngest participant in the program's history. "When will you get a real career?" Dad asked during Thanksgiving dinner after I shared my news. "Hotel management is fine for now, but you cannot build a substantial future in service." I stopped sharing my professional achievements with them after that night. Over the next 2 years, I rose through Pinnacle's corporate ranks while simultaneously developing my own business philosophy. I kept a secret document on my laptop, comprehensive business plan for acquiring and revitalizing struggling boutique hotels. Every night, I refined this plan, researching market trends and identifying potential properties that fit my vision. When Catherine introduced me to a group of investors who had been impressed by my work at Pinnacle, I was ready. My presentation was polished from countless practice sessions in front of my bathroom mirror. To my astonishment, they agreed to back my venture. At 27, I signed papers for my first property, a once grand hotel in Providence that had fallen into disrepair and financial trouble. Taking on that level of debt was terrifying. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, heart pounding, wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. But during daylight hours, confidence returned. I assembled a small but dedicated team who believed in my vision for what would become the first Wellington luxury collection property. The 18 months that followed were the most challenging and rewarding of my life. I worked 17-hour days, handling everything from refinancing negotiations to selecting the thread count for the bed linens. When the property reopened after renovations, the response exceeded even my most optimistic projections. We reached profitability 3 months earlier than the business plan had estimated. Success bred success. With the Providence property generating positive cash flow and excellent press, securing funding for a second location became easier. A third followed 14 months later. The Wellington Luxury Collection was becoming a recognized name in the industry, known for personalized service and thoughtfully designed spaces that respected each property's unique character and history. At 29, I received the Rising Star in Hospitality Award at a major industry conference. For the first time in years, my parents attended an event related to my career. I spotted them in the back of the ballroom, looking uncomfortable and out of place among the hospitality executives. "We're proud of you," Mom said afterward, air kissing near my cheek. "Though I still wonder when you will find time to settle down with all this hotel business keeping you busy." Dad examined his watch repeatedly during the reception, making it clear he had more important places to be. The speech was nice, very enthusiastic. "Is there much money in all this?" That brief reconciliation attempt only reinforced the distance between us. They still did not see the value in what I had built, viewing it as some extended phase rather than the empire it was rapidly becoming. When James Hartford announced his retirement the following year, Pinnacle Hotels found itself in a vulnerable position. Using every business connection I had made and leveraging the success of the Wellington brand, I secured financing for what seemed impossible, acquiring the entire Pinnacle portfolio. The business press called it the hospitality coup of the decade. At 30, I rebranded the entire operation as Wellington Luxury Properties, suddenly finding myself at the helm of 15 hotels across 3 continents with over 3,000 employees. Throughout all this growth and success, my parents remained almost willfully unaware of the scale of my achievements. Despite occasional press coverage and industry recognition, they continued to speak of my career as if I were some kind of manager rather than the owner. I was now the CEO of a rapidly expanding luxury brand. I stopped trying to make my parents understand and instead channeled all my energy into building something undeniable. Each new property received my obsessive attention. I personally designed the penthouses, selected the signature scents for the lobbies, and trained management on the Wellington service standards that were becoming legendary among discerning travelers. My executive team became the family that supported and celebrated my vision. Catherine, who had left Pinnacle to join my company as Chief Operating Officer, provided the maternal guidance I no longer received from Diana Wellington when Thomas made partner at his law firm. My parents threw an elaborate celebration. My invitation apparently got lost in the mail. I learned about the event from a cousin's social media post. The hurt was profound, but by then I had become an expert at transforming emotional pain into professional drive. I buried myself in work, expanding Wellington's footprint and reputation. Industry accolades poured in, but the personal emptiness remained. The irony wasn't lost on me. I owned properties where families gathered to celebrate special moments together, while my own family relationships withered from neglect and misunderstanding. Walking through my hotels, I would sometimes pause to watch multi-generational families laughing together over dinner or parents proudly celebrating their children's accomplishments in our event spaces. These moments would trigger a hollow ache in my chest, a reminder of what success could not be. By my 30th birthday, Wellington Luxury Properties had become synonymous with exceptional experiences for the discerning traveler. Our properties regularly topped the world's best lists, and our loyalty program members included celebrities, royalty, and business elites. The Wellington name, once associated only with my father's legal reputation in Boston, now appeared on buildings in New York, San Francisco, London, Singapore, and beyond. I celebrated this milestone birthday alone in my New York penthouse, overlooking Central Park from 40 floors up. The view was spectacular, the champagne perfectly chilled, but the achievement felt hollow without anyone who truly understood the journey to share it with. My phone contained congratulatory messages from my executive team, industry colleagues, and even former professors from Cornell, but nothing from my family. I told myself it didn't matter. Another necessary lie. The emotional wall between us had grown so high that even basic communication had become performative and empty. Monthly calls lasted barely 5 minutes, focused on weather and surface-level pleasantries. They knew better than to ask about the hotel work. And I knew better than to volunteer information they would only diminish. My brother Thomas called occasionally, usually when he needed hotel recommendations for clients. He seemed genuinely oblivious to the fact that I owned the very properties he was inquiring about. I would listen to him name-drop connections who could get him a good rate at Wellington Properties, never revealing that a single call to me would have resulted in a complimentary stay. "The Wellington in Chicago is supposedly excellent," he once said. "Do you know anyone who works there who could help me arrange something special for an important client?" "I might know someone," I replied, fighting back inappropriate laughter. The next day, I had the general manager personally upgrade Thomas's client to the presidential suite and provide VIP treatment throughout their stay. Thomas later bragged about his industry connections during a family dinner I did not attend. This disconnect extended to every aspect of my relationship with my family. They had created a narrative about my life and career that bore little resemblance to reality, and I had stopped trying to correct it. It was easier to be the slightly disappointing daughter who worked in hotels than to repeatedly face their inability to value what I had built. I channeled this hurt into creating the most exceptional hotel experiences possible. If my own family could not see my worth, I would ensure that every guest who entered a Wellington property felt genuinely valued. Our service standards became legendary. Staff members were trained to anticipate needs before guests articulated them, to remember returning guests' preferences without prompting, and to solve problems with creativity and grace. The Wellington philosophy centered on making people feel seen and appreciated, precisely what I had always craved from my parents. This approach generated fierce customer loyalty and industry recognition, but the personal emptiness remained. "You have built something extraordinary," Catherine observed during one late-night strategy session. "But when was the last time you did anything just for Morgan the person, not Morgan the CEO?" I had no answer. My identity had become completely entwined with the Wellington brand. Without the constant drive to expand and improve, who was I? The question remained unanswered as I continued building my empire, when our 15th property, a historic building in Boston's Back Bay that I had coveted since my Cornell days, finally opened after an extensive renovation. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly detached during the grand opening gala. Standing on the stage, accepting accolades from the mayor and tourism officials, I scanned the crowd out of habit, still half expecting to see my parents despite not having invited them. Their absence was both a relief and a persistent ache. The Boston property held special significance. It was a homecoming of sorts, a Wellington establishment in the city where I had grown up feeling inadequate. Part of me had fantasized about my parents stumbling upon it, finally realizing what their daughter had accomplished. Another part dreaded the inevitable disappointment if they still failed to understand. After the opening, life returned to its familiar pattern of 18-hour workdays, international flights, and constant problem-solving. I maintained apartments in New York, London, and Singapore, but none of them felt like home. My executive assistant began scheduling personal time in my calendar, blocks that I invariably filled with more work. The news of my sister Jessica's engagement arrived via text message one Tuesday morning as I was reviewing quarterly projections. Jessica, 5 years younger than me, the baby of the family, had followed a more traditional path as an elementary school teacher. We had been close as children but had drifted apart as my career took me farther from Boston, and Brian proposed last night. Wedding next spring. Would love for you to be a bridesmaid if your hotel stuff allows time off. Miss you. I stared at the message for several minutes, surprised by the invitation and the rush of emotion it triggered. Despite our distance, Jessica wanted me in her wedding party. Perhaps some family connections remained salvageable after all. My reply was immediate. Absolutely yes. Just tell me when and where. So happy for you. What I did not expect was how this wedding would become the catalyst for a family confrontation years in the making, or how it would finally force me to confront the cost of success without authentic connection. 2 weeks after accepting Jessica's bridesmaid invitation, I received another text that made my stomach drop. Mom and Dad are insisting on handling everything. They have already booked the Wellington in Boston for the ceremony and reception. Ironic, right? Some fancy hotel with your name. Weird coincidence. My sister had no idea. None of them did. Somehow, despite press coverage, industry recognition, and the Wellington name literally on buildings in major cities, my family remained completely unaware that I owned the very hotel where they were planning to host her wedding. For a moment, I considered telling Jessica immediately, but something held me back. What if this could be the moment they finally saw my success with their own eyes? What if they experienced the Wellington standard of service and recognized what I had built before knowing it was mine? The decision weighed heavily as I drafted my response. Sounds beautiful. Looking forward to it. This choice set in motion a series of events I could never have anticipated. Within days, the booking notification appeared in our system: Wellington family wedding, Boston property, spring 2023. As the owner, I received automatic alerts for high-value bookings across all properties, and my family's event qualified due to the extensive room block and full ballroom rental. I called Marcus Jenkins, the general manager in Boston, to discuss the situation. Your family is booking our property, and they do not know you own it, he clarified, understandably confused. Correct. And I would like to keep it that way for now. May I ask why, Miss Wellington? A fair question, but not one with a simple answer. I just need to handle this in my own way. Please ensure they receive impeccable service, but do not reveal my connection to the property. Marcus, consummate professional that he was, simply replied, of course. Consider it handled. For the next month, I received updates about the wedding planning process. My parents toured the property, met with the events team, and began making arrangements, all while having no idea their daughter was the owner. Signing off on every decision, the first in-person encounter came during the initial venue tour. I watched through security cameras from the management office as my family entered the lobby. Jessica looked radiant with excitement, while her fiancé Brian seemed appropriately impressed by the grandeur of the space. My parents, however, immediately began examining everything with critical eyes. The lobby seemed smaller than it appeared online, my mother commented to the events coordinator, a talented woman named Alicia, whom I had personally hired. The floral arrangements are a bit ostentatious, my father added, gesturing toward the signature Wellington display of fresh orchids and roses that I refreshed weekly with selections from local florists. I watched Alicia maintain her professional composure as she guided them through the property, explaining the amenities and services available for wedding parties. When they reached the grand ballroom, a space I had personally overseen the restoration of, preserving its 19th century architectural details while adding modern lighting and acoustic enhancements, my father immediately began negotiating. This Standard package will not do for our daughter, he insisted. We expect significant upgrades given the size of our booking. Alicia glanced momentarily toward the camera, knowing I was watching. I sent her a quick text, offer Wellington celebration package at standard rate. This package, normally reserved for our most elite clients and priced accordingly, included numerous luxury enhancements. Offering it at the standard rate was unprecedented. But I wanted Jessica to have the perfect wedding despite my parents' behavior. As the planning progressed, my parents' demands escalated. They requested room upgrades for 20 family members. Special menu items not on our catering list, extended hours for the reception, and numerous other accommodations that would have been flatly refused for any other client. I approved them all, watching from a distance as my staff struggled to maintain their professionalism in the face of increasingly entitled behavior. Jessica, meanwhile, seemed genuinely appreciative and somewhat embarrassed by our parents' approach. During one planning meeting, after my father berated a staff member over the shade of white used in the sample table linens, I heard her apologize. "I am so sorry about my dad," she told Alicia when our parents stepped away. "This means a lot to them, but they are being ridiculous." "No apology necessary," Alicia assured her with the genuine warmth that made her excellent at her job. "We want your day to be perfect." As the wedding weekend approached, I arranged to be present as a bridesmaid while continuing to maintain my secret. The charade was becoming increasingly complicated, but I was committed to seeing it through. The rehearsal dinner held in our private dining room became the flashpoint. My father had selected an expensive wine that was served at precisely the wrong temperature. His reaction was immediate and disproportionate. "This is completely unacceptable," he shouted at Ryan, our 23-year-old sommelier, who had recently completed his certification. "For what we are paying, I expect perfection. Get me the manager immediately." Before Ryan could respond, I stepped in, unable to watch my staff be mistreated any longer. "Is there a problem with the service?" I asked momentarily, forgetting that I was supposed to be just another bridesmaid. My father turned to me, surprised. "Morgan, this is not your concern. I need to speak with management about the incompetence of their staff." "I am happy to help resolve the issue," I replied carefully, signaling Ryan to give us a moment. "Since when do you know anything about fine wine service?" My father scoffed. "Just because you work at some hotel doesn't make you an expert on proper hospitality." The irony of his statement might have been humorous under different circumstances. Instead, it just highlighted how little they understood about my life. "I know enough to recognize that the staff here is doing an excellent job," I said evenly. "Perhaps we could address any concerns privately without disrupting Jessica's dinner." "What I need," my father insisted, his voice rising, "is to speak to whoever owns this place. Their staff needs proper training." Little did he know, he was already speaking to the owner. The moment to reveal the truth hovered between us, but Jessica's pleading expression convinced me to let it pass. This was her rehearsal dinner, not the time for family revelations. "I will make sure your concerns are addressed," I promised, stepping away to speak with Marcus, who had been observing the situation from near the kitchen entrance. "Have the 1982 Bordeaux brought up from my private collection," I instructed him quietly. "Serve it with my compliments, but do not mention my connection." The wine, worth several thousand per bottle and not on any menu, arrived moments later. Ryan presented it with perfect professional form, explaining its provenance and exceptional quality. My father, momentarily silenced by the gesture, accepted the wine without further complaint. The remainder of the evening passed without incident, but the tension remained palpable. As I retired to my penthouse suite that night, a room my family assumed I had simply been upgraded to because of Jessica's wedding, I knew the fragile peace would not last. The real confrontation was still coming. The morning of Jessica's wedding arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that event planners dream about: clear blue skies, mild temperature, and a gentle breeze. From my penthouse window, I could see the Boston Public Garden coming alive with fresh greenery and early tourists. Under different circumstances, it would have been a day of pure celebration. My phone buzzed with an urgent message from Marcus, Mr. Wellington, demanding complete reset of ballroom claims. Table configuration is wrong despite approving final layout last week. Staff attempting to accommodate but cannot complete before ceremony without additional resources. I checked the time, 7:30 in the morning, with the ceremony scheduled for 4 in the afternoon. Such a major change would normally be impossible. But I immediately authorized overtime for additional staff and called in our auxiliary event team, before I could even shower. Another message arrived. Mrs. Wellington insisting on floral changes, rejected delivery from approved vendor. Demanding specific orchid variety not seasonally available. The messages continued throughout the morning. My father wanted the premium bar package enhanced with specific bourbon brands not in our inventory. My mother decided the chairs needed different sashes than the ones they had selected weeks ago. The approved menu suddenly required modifications to accommodate forgotten dietary restrictions. Each demand came with the implicit or explicit threat that they would take their business elsewhere if not accommodated. They were oblivious to the fact that relocating a 200-person wedding with 8 hours' notice was virtually impossible. By 11 o'clock, Marcus called rather than texted, his normally unflappable demeanor showing clear strain. "Miss Wellington, I apologize, but the situation has become untenable. Your father is now in the ballroom personally directing my staff on moving tables. He told Carmen from our events team that she obviously does not understand proper event layout and should find another profession." Carmen was a 20-year veteran of the industry who had worked for the Ritz-Carlton before I recruited her to Wellington. The thought of my father berating her made something snap inside me. "I am coming down," I said. "Please assemble the executive team in the presidential suite. It is time to address this situation directly." After quickly dressing in one of my signature business suits rather than the bridesmaid dress hanging in my closet, I texted Jessica, "Need to speak with Mom and Dad urgently regarding wedding arrangements. Can you direct them to the presidential suite? I will explain everything soon." Her confused reply came quickly, "What is going on?" "They are in the ballroom terrorizing the staff." "What do you need to talk to them about?" "Trust me," I wrote back. "This is important." 20 minutes later, my parents arrived at the presidential suite, clearly irritated at being pulled away from their micromanagement of the wedding preparations. Their expressions shifted from annoyance to confusion when they found not only me, but also Marcus and 5 other members of the Wellington executive team waiting for them. "Morgan, what is the meaning of this?" my father demanded. "We have a wedding to finalize, and the staff here needs constant supervision to get anything right." I took a deep breath, acutely aware that this moment would permanently alter our family dynamic. "I need to clarify something," I began. "The staff you have been berating since you arrived are not just hotel employees. They are my employees. Every person you have spoken to, every service you have demanded, every accommodation you have received, all of it has happened under my authority." My mother's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? Are you working here now? Is that why you are dressed like that instead of getting ready with the bridesmaids?" "I do not work here," I replied steadily. "I own here. Wellington Luxury Properties is my company. I founded it. I built it. I own all 15 properties across 3 continents, including this one." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face cycled through expressions, disbelief, confusion, and finally a flash of embarrassment, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "That is impossible," he finally said. "You manage hotels. You never mentioned owning anything of this scale." "I stopped mentioning my career achievements when it became clear they did not interest you," I replied. "But yes, this is my company. The Wellington in the name is not a coincidence." My mother sank into one of the suite's plush armchairs. "You own all of this, since when?" "I founded the company 5 years ago with one property. We acquired Pinnacle Hotels 2 years ago and rebranded as Wellington Luxury Properties. It has been covered extensively in the business press." My father's expression hardened. "So, you have been deceiving us this entire time, letting us book this venue without telling us you owned it? What kind of game are you playing?" The accusation stung, despite their absurdity. "Game? You have dismissed my career at every turn. You have treated my staff, some of the most dedicated and professional people in the industry, with contempt. You have made demands that would be rejected outright from any other client. All of which I approved because I wanted Jessica to have a perfect wedding." "This is mortifying," my mother whispered, likely remembering every critical comment she had made about the design elements I had personally selected. At that moment, Jessica and Brian appeared at the suite door, which had remained ajar. "What is going on?" Jessica asked, looking between us with growing alarm. "Why is everyone in here instead of getting ready?" "Your sister has been hiding things from the family," my father began. "That is not fair," I interrupted. "I have never hidden anything. You simply never asked, never showed interest. Do you know how many interviews I have given about building this company? How many industry award ceremonies I have attended alone? Because my own family could not be bothered to show up." Jessica's eyes widened. "Wait, you own this hotel? The Wellington is your company. Why did you never say anything? Would it have mattered?" I asked softly. "When has anything I have accomplished ever been enough?" My father dismissed this with a wave. "This is hardly the time for your theatrics, Morgan. We have a wedding to finish arranging, and now we discover our own daughter has been watching us like some kind of spy in her hotel. 3000 employees, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. 15 properties, a company valued at $1.2 billion. I built all of this while you were telling everyone I had a cute little job in hotel management." The numbers finally seemed to penetrate. My father fell silent, actually taking in the information for the first time. After a long pause, he asked, "Why did you not tell us the company had grown to this extent? As family, we should have been informed about such developments." His question missed the point so dramatically that I almost laughed. Informed as family? When exactly have you treated me as family, Dad? Was it when you refused to help with college because I chose hospitality instead of law? Or when you skipped my graduation? Or maybe when you forgot to invite me to Thomas's partner celebration? "We have always supported you," my mother protested weakly. "No," I replied firmly. "You have always tolerated me. There is a difference." Jessica moved to my side, taking my hand. "Morgan, I had no idea about any of this. Why did you keep it from me, too?" It was easier than constantly explaining why our parents could not acknowledge my success, I admitted. "I am sorry for not telling you." My father, rather than processing the emotional significance of the moment, shifted immediately to practical considerations. "Well, now that we know about this connection, I assume the family will receive appropriate discounts for future stays. We have been paying full price all this time when we could have been getting family rates." That question, so perfectly encapsulating his inability to see beyond himself, was the final straw. "This is what you take from this moment?" I asked incredulously. "Not pride in what your daughter has built, not regret for how you have treated her staff, just concern about whether you have been getting the best possible price?" Brian, who had remained silent until now, gently suggested, "Perhaps we should consider moving the wedding to another venue. This seems like a complicated situation, and we do not want family tension to overshadow the day." My father seized on this immediately. "Yes, that might be best. We would not want to impose on Morgan's business." His tone made the statement an insult rather than a consideration. "The contract has been signed," I pointed out. "Everything is prepared. Moving now would be logistically impossible." "Then we will simply proceed as clients rather than family," my father declared coldly. "Since that appears to be how you prefer to arrange matters," I replied. With that, he took out his phone and typed something. Seconds later, my own phone buzzed with a message. I looked down to read, "You're not welcome in our 5-star hotel. Your presence would make the family uncomfortable at Jessica's wedding. Please respect our wishes as clients." The breathtaking audacity of the text, claiming ownership of my hotel while banning me from my sister's wedding, left me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice, it was perfectly steady. "Marcus, please escort Mr. and Mrs. Wellington back to their suite." "Jessica, I am so sorry this is happening on your wedding day. I would never want to ruin this for you." "Morgan, please," Jessica began, tears forming in her eyes. "It's all right," I assured her. "Your day should be perfect." As my parents were led from the room, I picked up my phone and typed a message to our head of security. "Please revoke the Wellington family's VIP access effective midnight tonight. Standard guest protocols only." The wedding proceeded without me. I watched from security feeds in my office as Jessica, beautiful but visibly distressed, exchanged vows with Brian. I watched my parents accept congratulations from guests presenting themselves as the proud family while I sat alone in my tower above them. At midnight, precisely as the reception wound down, their key cards stopped working with VIP access. No more entrance to the exclusive Wellington Club Lounge. No more priority service. No more special amenities. They had wanted to be treated as regular clients rather than family. I was simply honoring their request. When my father called the front desk to complain, he was politely informed that their access level had been adjusted according to management instructions. "Do you know who I am?" I heard him demand through the recorded call. "Yes, sir. You are Harold Wellington, guest in room 812, the night manager replied professionally. "I would be happy to send a new key card with standard guest access." It was a small, perhaps petty victory that provided little consolation as I sat alone in my office watching my family celebrate without me. The days following Jessica's wedding passed in a blur of work and emotional numbness. I threw myself into operations with even greater intensity than usual, scheduling back-to-back meetings that left no time for reflection. My executive team exchanged concerned glances but knew better than to mention the wedding or my family. Industry blogs and social media had picked up fragments of the Wellington family drama. Speculation ran wild, with some outlets suggesting internal company conflict and others reporting a hostile takeover attempt by relatives. Our PR team worked overtime to minimize the damage, but the gossip persisted. A week after the wedding, I retreated to my New York penthouse, claiming a rare weekend off. In reality, I could no longer maintain the facade of being unaffected. The emotional wall I had built over years had cracked. And everything was pouring through. Catherine arrived unannounced Saturday morning using the emergency access code I had given her years ago. "You are not answering calls or emails," she said. Finding me still in pajamas at 11 o'clock in the morning, surrounded by takeout containers and spreadsheets. "The team is worried." "I am fine," I insisted automatically. Just catching up on quarterly projections. Catherine, who had known me since I was a front desk associate handling irate guests with perfect composure, simply raised an eyebrow. Morgan, I have watched you build an empire by transforming pain into ambition. But eventually, the pain needs to be addressed directly. What would you suggest? I asked, aiming for sarcasm, but hearing the vulnerability in my voice instead. Family therapy. Somehow, I do not think the Wellingtons are candidates for group healing, I replied. Catherine sat beside me on the sofa, gently closing my laptop. This has never been about them, she said softly. This is about you, what you need, what you have been seeking through all this success. I built this company because I believe in exceptional hospitality. I protested. You built this company to prove your worth to people who were never going to see it, she countered gently. And in the process, you created something extraordinary. But the hole inside does not get filled with more properties or higher profit margins. The truth of her words broke something open inside me. For the first time since I was a child, I allowed myself to cry openly in front of another person. Years of suppressed hurt, disappointment, and longing poured out as Catherine simply sat with me, offering the maternal comfort Diana Wellington had never provided. When the storm of emotion finally subsided, Catherine said, "Of course, he is," I said. "I want us to stay connected," Jessica said. "Whatever happens with them, I do not want to lose my sister again." That simple affirmation meant more than she could know. Over the following months, I maintained limited contact with my parents while focusing on my own healing. Weekly therapy sessions helped me recognize patterns. I had never acknowledged how my entire identity had become wrapped up in proving my worth through achievement. How I measured my value through external validation rather than internal fulfillment. Success was my armor, I told my therapist during one particularly insightful session. If I could just be successful enough, impressive enough, it would not matter that my own parents did not value me. And now? She prompted. Now I am beginning to understand that no amount of success can heal that wound. Only I can do that. This realization led to gradual changes in how I operated. I established the Wellington Hospitality Foundation, providing scholarships to first-generation college students pursuing careers in the industry. I developed mentorship programs for young professionals whose families did not support their career choices. For the first time, I began cultivating a life outside of work. I reconnected with college friends I had lost touch with during my single-minded climb. I accepted a dinner invitation from Sebastian, an architect who had designed our Singapore property, and was surprised to find myself enjoying his company without mentally drafting emails throughout the meal. "You seem different," he observed over dessert. "More present." "I am trying to be," I admitted. My executive team noticed the changes, too. Meetings became more collaborative rather than directive. I began taking actual weekends off and encouraged my staff to maintain healthier work-life boundaries as well. 6 months after the wedding incident, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "Saw this," with a link to a Wall Street Journal profile of me and the Wellington brand. The article detailed the company's growth, innovative approach to hospitality, and my personal journey from front desk associate to industry leader. The body of the email contained just one line: "We had no idea it was this significant." After considerable thought, I replied, "There is a lot we do not know about each other. Perhaps that could change." This tentative exchange opened a channel of communication, though progress remained slow and fragile. My father predictably found direct acknowledgement more difficult. His first email focused on tax strategies for my hotel business rather than any personal reconnection. After consulting with my therapist, I suggested meeting on neutral ground, not at any Wellington property, for coffee. The first encounter was painfully awkward, with my father discussing the stock market and my mother making nervous observations about the cafe's decor. "I did not come here to talk about interest rates," I finally said. "I came to begin rebuilding a relationship, if that is something you both want." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We have always wanted a relationship with you, Morgan. You were the one who became distant." Rather than arguing about the past, something my therapy had helped me recognize as a pointless exercise, I focused on the present. "I am here now, trying to connect. Can we start from this point forward?" My mother reached across the table to take my hand, the first genuine physical contact between us in years. "We would like that very much," she said. My father nodded stiffly, the closest to an emotional acknowledgement he could manage. "Your success is real. Your company is extraordinary. Neither of those things requires your parents' validation to be true. Then why does it still hurt so much?" I whispered. "Because you are human," she replied simply. "And it is time you allowed yourself to be." That conversation marked the beginning of a different kind of journey. The next day, I made 2 calls. One to a highly recommended therapist specializing in family trauma and another to Jessica. My sister answered immediately. Morgan, I have been trying to reach you for days. Are you okay? Not really, I admitted, the honesty feeling foreign but necessary. But I am working on it. How was the honeymoon? Beautiful, but overshadowed by what happened. I had no idea, Morgan. About the company, about how mom and dad have treated you all these years. I feel terrible. You have nothing to feel terrible about, I assured her. I should have been more open with you. They were wrong, she said firmly. What they did at the wedding was unforgivable. Have you spoken to them since returning? Yes, she sighed. They have their own version of events, of course. Dad is still angry about the key card incident. Despite everything, this made me laugh. It was a small beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. Jessica served as a bridge during this tentative reconciliation, arranging family dinners where the conversation gradually became less superficial. My parents still struggled to fully comprehend the magnitude of what I had built, but they were making efforts to learn. Thomas says your Boston property is considered the best in the city, my father mentioned during one dinner. His version of a compliment. Thank you, I replied. Accepting the awkward praise for what it was, a step toward recognition that I continued building both my company and my sense of self beyond professional achievement. Sebastian and I developed a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values. My friendship circle expanded beyond industry contacts. For the first time in my adult life, I began to experience success as one component of a fulfilling life rather than its sole defining feature. 1 year after the wedding confrontation, I stood on the balcony of our newest property in Paris, watching the Eiffel Tower lights shimmer against the evening sky. Wellington, Paris had been a particularly challenging project, navigating French bureaucracy, preserving historical elements while modernizing systems, and recruiting staff who embodied both Parisian sophistication and Wellington warmth. Yet for the first time, I had approached a property opening with a sense of balance. I had delegated, appropriately trusted my team, and even managed to sleep regular hours throughout the process. The result was no less exceptional for having been achieved with less personal martyrdom. Sebastian joined me on the balcony, wrapping his arm around my waist. Congratulations, he said, kissing my temple. It is magnificent. Thank you for understanding all the late nights and early mornings, I replied, leaning into him. Our relationship had flourished despite my demanding schedule. Perhaps because he understood the passion that drove me while gently encouraging me to find space for other priorities as well. The Wellington touch is evident everywhere, he observed. But this one feels different somehow. I designed it with joy instead of something to prove, I explained. That makes all the difference. Inside, the opening gala was in full swing. Industry leaders, Parisian elite, and travel journalists mingled in the grand salon I had envisioned 2 years earlier. The Wellington Paris represented not just another business achievement, but a new chapter in how I approached success itself. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. The ultrasound says it's a girl. You're going to be an aunt. Can't wait for you to meet her in 4 months. The news brought immediate tears to my eyes, happy ones for a change. My sister was creating her own family, and I would be part of it. Everything okay? Sebastian asked, noticing my emotion. Everything is wonderful, I replied, showing him the message. I'm going to be Aunt Morgan. This personal joy meant as much to me as the professional triumph unfolding inside, a realization that would have been impossible for the Morgan of a year ago. Jessica's pregnancy created an unexpected opportunity for further family healing. When she asked if I would host a baby shower at the Boston property, I suggested something more significant. What if you and Brian bring mom and dad to Paris instead? A family trip before the baby arrives. My treat, of course. The invitation represented more than just a luxury vacation. It was an opportunity to share my world with my family on my terms, in an environment where my accomplishments could not be minimized or overlooked. To my surprise, they accepted. 2 months later, I greeted my parents in the lobby of Wellington, Paris, watching their expressions as they took in the grandeur of the space. You designed all this? My mother asked, genuine awe in her voice as she admired the custom chandeliers and meticulously restored moldings. Every detail, I confirmed. Would you like a tour? For the first time, I showed my parents my professional world without downplaying its significance. I introduced them to executive team members who spoke of my leadership with respect and admiration. I explained the thinking behind design choices and service protocols. I shared the challenges and triumphs of creating a luxury experience that felt both exclusive and welcoming. Watching my father observe a staff training session, I saw something I had never witnessed before: actual recognition of the complexity and value of what I did. The level of detail is extraordinary, he commented afterward. I had no idea hospitality operated at this level of sophistication. From him, this constituted high praise. On their final evening, I hosted a private dinner in my Paris apartment overlooking the Seine. As we shared wine and conversation, I realized the dynamic had shifted in subtle but important ways. They were seeing me, truly seeing me, perhaps for the first time. What you have built is remarkable, my father said as we lingered over dessert. I did not fully understand until seeing it firsthand. That means a lot to me, I replied honestly. We should have supported your choices from the beginning, my mother added, reaching for my hand. I'm sorry we did not. The acknowledgement, so long awaited, felt both satisfying and strangely less necessary than it once would have been. I had found my own validation in the interim. We can only move forward, I said, squeezing her hand in return. And back in New York, 2 weeks later, I launched a new initiative, a mentorship and support program specifically designed for young entrepreneurs whose families did not support their vision. Using my own experience as a foundation, I created resources I wished had been available during my early career struggles. Success without support is possible, I told the first cohort of participants. But having a community that believes in you makes the journey less lonely. Through helping others navigate similar challenges, I found additional healing for my own wounds. Each young person who flourished despite family skepticism reinforced the lesson I had learned through such difficulty. External validation is never a substitute for believing in yourself. 3 months later, I hosted a major industry conference at our Boston property, the site of the previous year's painful confrontation. My family attended the opening reception, including Jessica with her newborn daughter, Lily. Watching my parents proudly introduce themselves as Morgan's family to industry colleagues created a sense of closure I had not expected to find. Later that evening, in my office overlooking Boston Harbor, I received a text from my father. The keynote was excellent. Your points about authentic luxury resonated with everyone. Proud of what you have accomplished. I smiled at the message, not because I needed his approval, but because it represented growth on both our parts. My success no longer hinged on their recognition, and they were finally able to see the value in the path I had chosen. Turning to look out at the city lights reflecting on the water, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The journey had been far from easy, but it had led me to a place of genuine peace, success defined on my own terms, relationships based on authentic connection rather than obligation, and the freedom that comes from writing your own story instead of conforming to someone else's expectations. What is your experience with family members who dismissed your dreams? Have you ever had to prove yourself to people who should have believed in you from the start? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. Share with someone who might need encouragement to follow their own path, even when those closest to them do not understand. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, sometimes the greatest triumph is not proving others wrong, but discovering you no longer need their approval to know your own worth.